before we move on to something a little more challenging. Okay, cool. So with today's class, like I said, we're going to kind of do the same thing, except we're now going to look at word problems. And the problem with word problems is that sometimes they have a nice equation, so that's nice because you can plug things in, but usually you're not going to have a graph. So we have to be able to read the words, understand what they mean, and then kind of do the same thing we've been doing. So quick review, you don't need to write this down, but just a review of what is a function. So a function is a type of relation in which there is only one output value for each input value. For every input value, there is a unique output value. We kind of went over this yesterday, so I'm just going to talk right through it. On a table, if it's a function, there are no repeating inputs. On a graph, there are no stacked points. They can't stack up on top of each other. And on a mapping diagram, there's no branching. So this is kind of what we learned last week, but just a quick review on how to identify a function. And then just a review from yesterday, when you have a function written as an equation like this one, you can always put in a number as your input. So Alyssa, give me a random number, any number.
5.
5. So if Alyssa wants to input a 5, what would she have to do to the rest of this equation? It's the review from yesterday. Who remembers? If I'm finding f of 5, what should I do?
3 in parentheses 5 plus 1.
Yeah. So in other words, I'm substituting the x with a 5. I'm plugging in a 5. And then you just solve that. So 3 times 5 is 15. 15 plus 1 is 16. So that means that f of 5 equals 16. So again, that's just a review from yesterday. And that's also something that's on your Khan Academy. So just make sure that you understand how to do that. Do I have any questions on this? Okay, cool. So now let's look at a real word problem. This is actually from last year's test. So there's a good chance that something similar will show up on this year's test. So could I have a volunteer read for us? Anyone want to read? Y'all are sleepy this morning. Okay, I'm gonna read the first one, but there's a lot of word problems today, so y'all better wake up because we're gonna need some. I'm not gonna read everything. Okay. Mike and Krista rent a jet ski while on vacation. The rental cost is represented by the function C of h equals 50 plus 20h, where h is the number of hours of use and C of h is the total cost for h hours of use. How much does the jet ski cost if they use it for 4 hours? Okay, so this is the same type of problem that we've been doing. It's just that now it's a word problem, so it's a little bit more confusing. But remember, we're still doing the same kind of stuff. So would anyone like to guess or tell us what we should be doing?
Would you do 20 times 4?
Yeah, so in other words, they're telling us that h, what does h represent? H represents the number of hours, right? So if they want to know how much it's going to cost for 4 hours, they're basically telling us, they're asking us, what is C of 4. They want us to show what is C of 4. So at this point, I want you guys to write this part down. You don't have to write the whole word problem, but just the part where we're solving it. So if I want to know what is C of 4, that means that I need to substitute the H with a 4. All I'm doing is I'm taking my original function equation and I'm replacing the H with a 4. So I need to multiply first. So I'm doing 50. And then what is 20 times 4? 80. So C of 4 equals 50 plus 80, which is how much?
130.
130. So this means that the jet ski costs 130 for 4 hours. So notice we're not doing anything different. All we had to do was plug something in, just like we've been doing. Does anyone have any questions on this problem so far? All right, take a couple more seconds to finish writing. And let's go ahead and check out the next one. It's very similar. Can I have a volunteer read this one for us, please?
The height, h, and feet of an object thrown upward from a height of 144 feet is a function of time, t in seconds. The height can be determined by the function h and parentheses t equals minus 16t to the power of 2 plus 128t plus 144. What is the height of an object at 3 seconds?
Good. All right. So this function is a little bit longer, right? It's a little bit more complicated, but we're still doing the same thing. In this case, what does t represent?
Seconds.
Good. Time in seconds. And we're looking for how high is the object at 3 seconds. So what is it telling me to do?
3 times
Replace
t.
the 2 with the 3.
Good. We're basically going to find h of 3, which means I need to plug in a 3 for t. Now, there's 2 t's in there, so I'm going to have to plug in 3 twice. And remember how yesterday we had a negative symbol? And what do I do with that negative symbol? Every time I see a negative, do I just ignore it?
You bring it down.
Bring it down. So I have negative 16 times 3. Yes, please write this one down. Thank you for asking, Lauren. This part is really important to write down because when you're doing math, it's important to keep things organized and write everything down and not try to just do it in your head. Okay, so I'm just taking this whole function and plugging 3. Every time I see a t, I plug in a 3. Now, this one has a lot of big numbers, so we are going to use calculators. If you have your calculator with you or near you, go ahead and take it out so that you can multiply all these big old numbers. But now let's remember, we have to use PEMDAS. And PEMDAS tells me that the first thing I'm going to do here is what?
Multiply the 6. Wait,
Exponent.
the
Exponent.
exponent.
Yeah, the exponent. Parentheses, remember, parentheses only count if there's something to do inside of the parentheses.
Like
But
addition or subtraction?
right, like addition or
Inside the parentheses?
subtraction inside of a parentheses. And in this case, I have parentheses, but there's nothing going on inside of them. So that one's, I don't need to use it. But exponent, yeah, we're going to do that first. So I have to do 3 squared. What is 3 squared?
9.
9. Good. Okay, so 3 squared is 9. Now I can go ahead and I can do my multiplication. So first off, I have negative 16 times 9. You can use your calculators. What is negative 16 times 9?
Negative 24. I mean, 144.
Negative 144. Good. I can also do, right now, I can do 128 plus 3, or times 3. What is 128 times 3?
384.
384. Plus 144. Cool, now I can add everything up together. And before I even do that, what do you guys notice that we might be able to eliminate or cancel out?
Combine like terms, the 184 and the 144. Oh no,
Yeah, you are onto something. So I have a negative 144 and a positive 144. And when I add those together, what happens?
Turn to 0.
they cross out.
They cross out, they eliminate, they turn to 0. So I'm good with that. I don't even have to really do anything. My final answer is 384. So h of 3 equals 384. So after 3 seconds, this object is 384 feet in the air. It's pretty high. Okay, any questions so far on plugging in and evaluating functions by plugging in? Awesome. I'll give you guys another 30 seconds to finish copying and writing down. Okay, let's take a look at another. Here's another, it's very similar. This time I want you guys to try it on your own. And before you go and just go ahead and do it, I want you guys to just make sure you're reading things carefully because this one definitely has one slight little trick to it. So make sure that you're reading it carefully. Don't just go ahead and plug in random numbers. Take about, I'll give you guys 4 minutes to try this one on your own. 4 minutes, and I will go ahead and I'll read it out loud. So, in 1997, there were 31 laptop computers at Grove High School. Starting in 1998, the school bought 20 more laptop computers at the end of each year. The equation t equals 20x plus 31 can be used to determine t, the total number of laptop computers at the school, x years after 1997. What was the total number of laptop computers at Grove High School at the end of 2005? All right, about 20 seconds remaining. Remember, you can always send me your answers in the chat if you feel like you have it or if you have a question about it. Okay. All right. So this one's a little bit different because you have to read it very, very carefully, but can I have a volunteer explain what you had to do in this case, which is a little bit different from the other ones we've done? Anyone?
I counted up the years.
Okay. So it's asking what was the total of number of laptop computers at the end of 2005. So am I going to plug in 2005?
No.
No. Instead, what should I be plugging in?
The amount of different years between
1997?
1997 and
Mhm.
2005.
Good.
Okay.
Because I don't need to know the year. I need to know how many years have passed. So from 1997 to 2005, how many years passed?
150.
8 years. So it's been 8 years. That's what I'm going to be plugging in. I'm going to be plugging in an 8. So t equals 20 times 8 plus 31. And after I do all the math, what is my final answer? Who would like to share it? Everyone who sent it to me got it right.
191.
191. Good job. So 191 laptops. Okay, that one's it required a little bit of extra thinking, but does anyone have any questions on this one? Awesome. Give me a little thumbs up or a thumbs down, depending on how you feel about evaluating functions. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Good, I see many thumbs ups. Ooh, I even see some party emojis. I love it. Okay, good. Good. All right, so next up, now that we've gone over that part, let's look at domain and range, because you'll also see questions that ask you about the domain and range, but there's no graph. So you have to really read the problem carefully. And even though there's no graph, you kind of have to think things through a little bit differently. So can I have a volunteer read this problem out loud for us?
The number of miles a car can be driven depends on the number of gallons of gas in its tank. The function m equals 25 gallons
G, yeah.
models a situation in which a car gets 25 miles per gallon. If the gas tank holds 20 gallons of gas, which inequality represents its range?
Awesome, thank you. All right, so when you get a problem like this, it's very, very good to kind of break it down and write down every part of it. So first I'm gonna determine what is my input versus what is my output. So if you need to reread the question again to yourself, you can do that. But let's think about which of these variables, I have an M and I have a G, which of those is my input?
M.
M. Does anyone agree, disagree? And let me write the function down right here below. This function's a little bit different than usual. It doesn't have the parentheses, right? So it's a little bit different. But let's think about this. If I'm trying to figure something out, and I need to plug in a number, will I be plugging in a number for G or will I be plugging in a number for M?
M.
For M?
Wait, no, G.
Wait, no, G?
G. G.
G.
Okay, G. All right, so let's look at really quickly the previous problem. What did I plug in here? Which variable did I replace?
X.
The X.
X.
Okay, how about over here?
H.
T.
The T, I replaced the T. How about over here?
C.
H.
No.
Careful. H. So notice, they all use different letters, right? But at the end of the day, I'm always replacing the number. I'm always replacing the variable that is on the right side.
Right.
On the right side of my equation. So I'm always looking at the right side of my equation and plugging a number in there, the right side of my equation. So on this example, which variable should I be replacing that's on the right side?
G.
The G. So that's how I know that's my input. So my input is G, which means my output is M. And you can kind of think about it this way, because if you have a car, what do you put in your car?
Gas.
Gas, right? And the amount of gas that you put in will get out a certain amount of miles or mileage. The more gas you put in, the more miles you can drive. It's not like you can't do it the other way around. You can't put miles in your car and get gas out, right? That would make no sense. You have to put gas in and the miles kind of come out, if you can think about it that way. So that's why my input is gas and the output is mileage. Now, it tells us a little bit of information about the gas and about the miles. So what do I know about the gas? Read a little bit further. What information is it telling me about the amount of gas?
Yeah,
It says
25.
it's
I heard 25, and then I think someone else was
Good.
going to say
20.
20
yeah,
at the
20.
very end.
Yeah, the gas tank holds 20 gallons. So that means, what's the lowest amount of gas I can have in my tank?
20.
The lowest.
0.
0. I could be out of gas, right? I could have 0, but what's the highest amount that I could have?
20.
20. So for gas, I can write the domain, because this is my input values. My domain is 0 less than G less than or equal to 20. That's my domain. Now read the problem carefully and see if you can figure out the range.
Did we just do the multiplications?
So I guess let's take it a little bit slower. What does it tell you about the mileage?
There's 25.
I think there's 25 miles per gallon.
25 miles per gallon. Okay, so what's the lowest amount of miles I can drive?
0.
0.
0.
So I know it's going to start on 0. And you kind of can already see the answer choices, but let's figure out where they get that number. Because what's the greatest amount of miles I could drive with a
500.
full tank?
500.
And how did they get 500?
20
Multiply 25.
times 25.
Exactly, 20, because my whole gas tank holds 20 gallons. So if I have 20 gallons of gas in my car, if I have a full tank, that means I can do 25 miles for each gallon. So 25 times 20, that's how they got 500. So I know that my answer would be B. So with this type of problem, that's what you have to do. You have to read the problem carefully. You have to figure out all of the clues that it's giving you about the problem. And that's how we figure out the domain and range, because there's no graph. So I can't really look at a graph. I have to base everything on the words that I read. So at this point, we're going to do another example, but at this point, does anyone have any questions on how I got these numbers?
No.
How is G the input again?
Okay, so G is the input because with input and output, especially like in a real world problem, you always have to think about which one is affecting the other. So for example, in a car, I put in gas and I can drive more miles, right? The more gas I can put in my car, the more miles I can drive. But you can't do that the other way around. Can you put miles into your car
No.
and then get gas out on the other side? I wish you could do that because then I could get some free gas, but that's not how it works, right? You have to think about the direction of the relationship. Since I have to put gas in, that's my input. And what does my gas give me as my output? Mileage.
Okay, I get it.
Awesome. All right. So let's see. I have another one. Can I have a volunteer read this one for us?
I'll read it.
Thank you, Juan.
Tori has a cell phone plan, charges 9 cents for each text message sent. Tori plans to spend no more than $40 per month on texting bill each month. If C times C
C of
equals
T.
of right
Mhm.
of T equals 9 cents times T represents the total number of texts that you sent each month. What is the domain of the function?
Awesome. All right. So let's do the same thing we just did. We're going to start by writing down what is my input and what is my output. So based on the equation, you can do it based on the equation because this one is a normal function notation equation. So it already kind of tells you what is the input.
Here's the input.
T is the input, yeah. It's easy when it's written this way because you always know whatever's inside the parentheses, that's your input. So T is my input, and T represents what?
Text messages.
Number of text messages. My output is C of T, and C of T represents what?
The number of texts you sent each month.
Close. Think about what is the 0.09 doing?
She's paying 9 cents for each text messages.
Right. So if that's the amount of money you spend per text message, the total, once you multiply it out, would be the cost of texts each month. But we're not really going to worry about the output because the question is asking us, we want to know what is the domain. So it's important to know what the output is, but in this case, we're not going to worry too much about it because we care more about the input. So let's think about this. If I'm paying for text messages, is the amount of text messages going to be whole numbers, fractions, or something else?
Whole number.
Whole numbers, right? Because I can't send half of a text message. It's going to be each message I send is one whole message. So I could have one message, two messages, three messages, whatever. Keep going, right? So when you read this type of problem, it's very important to think about am I talking about whole numbers or am I talking about, fractions and decimals of numbers? In the previous problem, we were talking about the amount of miles, right? And if you're driving a car, it's not like you're going to transport from 1 mile to 2 miles. You go from 1 mile and everything in between to get to the next mile, and then everything in between, which is why in this example, we had a inequality. Because remember, inequalities are great because they tell us everything in between. So this is telling us from 0 to 500 and everything in between. But in this case, since I'm only talking about whole numbers, I can't have an inequality because inequalities would mean everything in between. But with text messages, I can't have half a text message. I can't have decimals. So I have to distinguish it. I have to write it a little bit differently. So for this one, my domain, I'm going to list out all the numbers. So I would write 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. I can also explain what my final number will be. So the greatest amount of text messages that she can send. We can figure that out because there's a little clue in the problem. So where can I highlight that gives me a clue about what's the most amount of text messages?
$40 per month.
So she wants to spend no more than $40 per month, which means that $40, if it's 9 cents for each text message, how can I figure out the total number of text messages?
$40 divided by 9 cents.
Yep, exactly. So I'm gonna take my calculator, and what's 40 divided by 0.09? It's about 444. So when I write my domain, I'm gonna write the first few, but instead of writing every single number from 1 to 444, I write my dot, 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 and I end it on, 444. And then I close it out. And that is how I'm gonna write my domain for this example. So it's different only because text message are concrete whole numbers. You can't like go in between 1 and 2. So for this type of problem, that's why I have to list each number individually rather than make an inequality. It might be a little confusing, so if you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask them now, and I'd be happy to clarify. Okay. It might help to do another one, so let's see what's up next. Okay. So this is more like what it'll look like on a test. Can I have a volunteer read this one?
Aaron wrote the function f(x) equals 20x minus 15. Find the amount of money he will make after washing x cars. Select all the values below that are in the domain of Aaron's function.
Awesome. Okay. So this is kind of similar. I want you guys to read to yourselves all the possible answer choices and think it's going to be select all, right? So there's going to be more than one option. Which of these make sense in the domain? So which of these values in the real world can you actually plug in? And you can send me your answers in the chat. All right, so I got a few good answers, but I also see a couple of questions. So I'm going to answer one of the questions. So if I'm looking for the domain is the input. And in this case, which variable represents my inputs?
X.
X. And what does X represent?
The number of cars.
The car.
The number of cars. So what this is asking me basically is which of these numbers make sense if I need to plug them in. If I'm talking about number of cars, which of these numbers are reasonable values to plug in? So what does that mean? Could I have 2 cars? Could he wash 2 cars?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So answer choice A is a reasonable number to plug in. Can I wash 2.3 cars?
No.
No, which is why B would not be a part of the domain. So basically what it's asking is which of these are the whole numbers? So we got A, we got C,
And E.
and we got E. Now let's say, just for the sake of it, let's say I had a number like -2. Would that make sense? No, right? I can't
No.
plug in negative numbers. And then finally, what if I had a number like, let's see, like 1,245?
Possible, but it's unreasonable.
Over time, probably.
Right. Maybe we would need a little bit more context, right? Like, does he have a business? How long is he washing cars? Is it only one day or is it a month? You know. So that's always the type of things you have to be thinking. Like, I loved, I think what Juan said. He was like, it's possible, but it's not reasonable, right? And with math, a lot of times with word problems, you'll get an answer, and if your answer doesn't make sense, then you know you did something wrong. Like if you're talking about the number of chickens and your answer was like 4005.2, you're probably wrong and you should probably go back and check your work. So it's important to always be thinking about those things. Any questions on this one?
No.
Cool. All right, so now we've got to I have like 7 questions. We have half an hour left. I have 7 questions that are all from tests, from previous tests. And in these questions, you might see some vocabulary words that we haven't learned yet. So I definitely want to go over some of these words before you do the problem. So first, can I just have a volunteer read the problem for us?
Jack is buying a subscription to a magazine club. The function C equals 45 plus 3 and 7500ths M. Describe the cost of the yearly subscription. C in terms of the number of magazines M he orders.
Perfect. Okay, so very similar. It wants us to know what's the domain. So let's start by just understanding what the domain represents. So my domain is my input. Which variable is my input?
M.
M is my input. And M represents
Number of magazines.
number of magazines. So very similar to the previous problem, what types of numbers are out of the question?
45.
What types of numbers? So like whole numbers, integers, fractions, decimals. What's bad?
Oh,
Fractions,
So no fractions,
negative.
no negatives, good,
no decimals.
and no decimals. Perfect. Okay. So the thing is, we have all of these keywords here that you might have learned, but to be honest, I always forget what these mean as well. So I'm going to go over these 4 types of numbers. And I want you guys to write down these definitions because I definitely think that they're going to bring this up on the test because they love to ask this question.
I have another number that can be out of the question.
Okay, what kind?
Maybe like under 3. 365 or under.
Okay, so something like because, oh, I see what you mean, because it's a yearly subscription, right? So that means that he's probably not going to be ordering more than 365 because there's only 365 days in the year. So that's very good. Okay, well now let's understand what each of these words means. So we know what whole numbers mean, right? Whole numbers are whole numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the most important thing about whole numbers is that they are only positive. So when you see the word whole number, those are positive whole numbers. Sometimes they also call them,
Write that.
yes, write this down. Call them counting numbers because that's kind of what you do with them, you count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all of those, but they have to be positive. So whole numbers is the one that everybody kind of knows. Does anybody remember what integers are? I'm going to take that as a no.
It's not
So
a-
integers are similar to whole
Wait.
numbers.
They're,
they're
are
not
they
natural.
decimals?
They don't have, no, they're not decimals.
No.
So they're very similar to whole numbers. The only difference is that these are positive and negative counting numbers. So there's still no fractions, no decimals, but with integers, it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but also -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So they're whole numbers, but it's the positives and the negatives. And that's a very important distinction because in a problem like this one, that's going to make a big difference. Then we have rational numbers. Rational numbers, the definition of a rational number is any number that can be written as a fraction. But I'm going to simplify it a little bit. And this is basically positive and negative, counting numbers, and decimals. So now we are including decimals. And remember that decimals are the same as fractions. So rational numbers are all of the whole numbers, all of the integers, and then in addition to that, they also include all of the decimals. And then finally, all real numbers basically just means everything. Every type
Would
of
it be
number.
except like infinite numbers?
So it includes infinite numbers because infinite numbers are just really big numbers, I guess, if that makes sense. The thing with all real numbers, you'll learn this in algebra 2, but there is such a thing as imaginary numbers. I don't want y'all to get all confused about that right now, but yes, there are such things as imaginary numbers. So there's real numbers and then there's imaginary numbers.
Would it be things like omega?
That's not technically a number, is it?
I think it's like, it is. I learned about it.
You learned of it? I don't know. I actually don't know what that is. So if you can teach me someday,
I could, yeah.
yeah, let me know. But the only thing you got to think about right now is that all real numbers are basically just everything fractions, decimals, whole numbers, positives, negatives, just every type of number that you guys know about. So as you finish writing down these definitions, which of the answers is going to be our answer for this question? If the domain is magazines, which type of number would be appropriate?
B.
B. Whole numbers, because it has to be positive and it cannot be a fraction or a decimal. Any questions on these definitions? Make sure you remember them because I guarantee you, you will see this on the test next week. Okie dokes. Anybody need another second or two to copy? Okay. All right, so here's a challenging one. This one's a fun one, but I'm including it because I definitely know that sometimes you'll get a question on a test that just looks like a lot, like it's like stressful to even look at it. So it's important to understand how to break things down. So would anyone like to read this? Because I don't mind reading it myself. Okay, cool. All right, here we go. The speed of the wind is changing according to the function v of t equals negative t over 2 plus 30, where t equals time in minutes after 6 p.m. and v of t equals wind speed in miles per hour. Which statement best describes the meaning of the equation v of 20 minus v of 10 equals negative 5? So there's a lot going on here. Let's remember, yesterday we kind of did a problem like this where I took two values and I had to subtract them. We kind of did this yesterday. But in this case, now they're applying it to a real world situation. So we kind of have to break it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down each part of this. I want to know, what does v of 20 mean? I want to know, what does v of 10 mean? And then I want to know what it means when you subtract those two values. So let's take a look at starting off with v of 20. Is 20 the input or the output?
Input.
Input, good. And my input represents what?
T.
T. And T is time in minutes after 6 p.m. So if my input is 20, what time is this talking about?
6 p.m.
Careful, you're close. So it's T is the time in minutes after 6 p.m. So if my input is 20, if T is 20, what time is it?
6:20.
6:20, exactly. Because T is the time in minutes after 6 p.m. So if T is 20, then it's been 20 minutes. That means that right now it is 6:20 p.m. What about V of 10? What time is it right now if my input is 10?
6:10.
6:10. Oops, 6:10. Okay. So now I know that if I'm subtracting those two values, I'm trying to figure something out, like what happened between 6:10 and 6:20. So go ahead and start by reading the answer choices because you can already eliminate two answer choices based on what we know so far. Which ones can I eliminate?
A and D.
A and D. Good. because A and D are taking the numbers that I have and putting it to the wrong information. So A is saying that the 10 and the 20 are talking about miles per hour, but the 10 and the 20 don't represent the velocity. The 10 and the 20 represent the time. So I know that this one's incorrect. And then same thing with D. They tried to make it sound like 10 and 20 was the velocity, but I know that it's not. So far I know that the 10 and the 20 represent the time. But then if I'm subtracting them and I get an answer of -5, what does that mean about the velocity of the wind?
It decreased.
It's lower.
Exactly, it went down. So based on my answer choices, I know that my correct answer is going to be
B.
B. So see how they love to do this. Like they give you this really challenging problem with a lot of words, some confusing functions, a lot of like, just things that you don't really need to know, because at the end of the day, you always have to think to yourself, what is my input and what is my output? That's always what you want to ask yourself. And most of the time, that'll give you the right answer. Was there a question?
Also, A and B don't work because wind doesn't travel that fast most of the time.
Yeah,
20
that's
miles.
true. That's true. That's a lot. 10 miles per hour is a lot to increase. And you can always think of it that way too. Like sometimes if you're not sure what the answer is, you can eliminate some answer choices simply because they don't make sense in the real world. That's a very good point. So, if you get to a problem that looks like this, where you just see a lot of words and it's very confusing, what should you always do? You always have a piece of paper in front of you. What should you do?
Know your input and output.
Write down write down what's my input, what is it representing, what is my output, what is it representing. They always tell you. It's always in there somewhere. You just have to find it. All right, this is all you now. Similar question. It's a little bit easier, but the question is very similar. So go ahead and try this one on your own. I'll give you guys 4 minutes and you can send me your answers in the chat. Or actually, you know what? I'm gonna put a poll. Let me start a poll. Hold on. There you go. So take your time. You have 4 minutes. But after those 4 minutes, pick an answer. Okay, about half of you have voted. There's about a minute left. So I have 7 votes in right now. I'm waiting on 6 more. $30, 5 people remaining. If you don't know, pick one and have your best guess. Always read the answers and think about, like David said, or no, Juan said in the previous problem, which ones don't make sense in the real world. Five, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. Here we go. So answer choice B was the most popular answer. So let's check and see if it was correct. So I have a function. I'm going to write it a little bit bigger because I don't like how small they make it. In that statement, which number is my input, the 0 or the 400?
0.
Good. You always know the input because it's in the parentheses. So that's my input, and the 400 is my output. Now, what is the input representing? Or which variable is the input?
T.
T.
T. And what does T represent?
Minutes after 8 a.m.
The minutes after 8 a.m. So if my input is 0, that means I have had 0 minutes after 8 a.m. So what time is it?
8.
8 a.m. That's it. Because the input is 0, so 0 minutes have passed, which means it's 8 a.m. Based on that, I can already get the right answer. However, let's also explain the output. My output, what does that represent?
The height that it already had. Well,
The altitude in feet. So that means 400 represents 400 what?
feet in the air.
Yeah, 400 feet in the air. You can always get those answers straight from the question. It's just a matter of putting it together. So since my input is 0, I know that it's 8 a.m. And since my output is 400, I know I'm talking about 400 feet, which is why answer choice A is the correct answer. Now, answer choice B was the most popular, so let's quickly see why that one's incorrect. So answer choice B tries to trick you because it gives you the 400 feet. So you're like, oh, cool, 400 feet, cool. And then the 0, you might think that 0 means like 12 a.m., like the start of the day. That's why you have to read very carefully because it tells you in the problem what that 0 is representing. 0 doesn't mean the start of the day. 0 means 8 a.m., 8 in the morning. So that's why it's very, very important to read that problem very, very carefully. Why would something like answer choice D maybe not make sense in the real world?
It would make sense. It's just that it's an airplane. It would be flying upwards, and I don't think it would be stationary for that long.
Exactly. So even though it could be possible, it's not necessarily, what was the word you used before? I really like the way you said it. It's possible, but it's not reasonable. Okay, so it's possible that it could be at 0, but 400 minutes is not, that's a very long time to be stationary. So that one you could have kind of X'd out just because it doesn't make sense. And then C might have made sense, but it was confusing it because With C, they made 0 the output and 400 the input. So they flipped the numbers. So that's why that one was incorrect. So anybody have any questions on this one? If you got it wrong, and by the way, I don't know who chose what because it's anonymous, but if you got it wrong, give me a thumbs up if you understand it now, or if you understand why you chose the wrong answer. Good, Alyssa, Christopher, good, Lauren.
See the 0 at first, that's why I picked
You thought 0 meant 12 a.m. Yeah, that's a classic mistake. Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm glad. This means we're learning, and that is all that matters. I don't care if you make a mistake. Okay, I think this is the last one we will get to. Yes, because there's only 10 minutes left. Another long one, another one that they make it look like it's going to be super confusing, but then at the end of the day, it really is not. So I don't know if anyone would like to read. I don't mind reading, but if anyone wants to, let me know now. Okay, I'll go. A bakery sells different packages of muffins. The number of muffins, X, and the price in dollars, Y, of the packages of muffins are given in the ordered pairs below. The set of ordered pairs is a relation that is also a function. And then there's the set. So 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 12, 13. The bakery is considering adding a new package of muffins. Which ordered pairs would make the relation not a function? Choose all that are correct. So if they added one of these ordered pairs to the list, which ones, because there might be more than one, would make this not a function? Take 2 minutes. Let me start a poll. Give me 1 second to start a poll because I have to make a new one. And then we can see what we get. There we go. All right. So the poll is up. Go ahead and pick your choices. Remember, there's going to be more than one, so choose carefully. I'm going to add 15 seconds because I know that I started the poll a little bit late. All right, 15 more seconds. Get an answer choice in. Even if you're guessing, do your best. I see 7 people have voted, so I'm still waiting on 6 of you guys. Put something, anything. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. Here are my answers. So the winner was answer choice D. So many of you said that D would make this relationship not a function. Now let's remind ourselves what makes it not a function. So if you have a list of numbers like this one, what are you looking for that would make it not a function?
The input.
The
But-
X.
Good. So you want no repeating X values. And if I put that 4,3, if I add that to the list, what's my problem? Where is it repeating?
Another 4.
The other 4.
Yeah, so I already have a 4,5 right there. So if I added 4,3 to the list, that would make it not a function anymore because all of a sudden I'm repeating the 4. So that was correct. There's one more correct answer and it did not get too many votes. So let's see what's
E.
going on. Yeah. So the only other one that would make it not a function is answer choice B. Because if I added answer choice B to the list, which one would it, why would it not be a
6,
function?
7.
Yeah, because
Because
I already
it's seven.
have, good, I already have 6,7. So I can't add 6,8 because that would repeat the X values.
If it was on a chart, wouldn't it be on top of each other?
Yeah, if you graphed it, they would be on top of each other. So that would be not a function. If I added 10,13, nothing would even though the 13s are repeating, that doesn't matter because that's my output. My outputs, that's okay if they repeat. So that one doesn't matter. If I put in 8,12, there are no repeating numbers at all, so that doesn't matter. And if I put in 24,18, again, there's no repeating numbers at all, so that one doesn't matter to us as well. So B and D were the only ones that would repeat numbers. Do I have any questions on this one? Any final questions? Because we're about to finish. Cool. All right. So I'll probably give you these questions as bell ringers throughout the week so that we can keep reviewing. I made a mistake on this. Your homework's not due Friday. Your homework is due when?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. It's already up on Khan Academy. So I know a couple of you already started it. I saw a few hundreds. So nice job if you already finished it. If you haven't finished it, make sure you get it done by tomorrow at midnight. And that is it. That is the only homework you're getting this week, by the way. So have a good rest of your days, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. You're all done.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for your help.